know that Australia is being invaded by toads? What is going on in the land down under? Well, it doesn't take being a scientist to see that cane toads are leapfrogging their way all over the island continent. They have traveled over hundreds of miles over land, leaving destruction in their wake. What are these toads up to? And what exactly has caused this to happen?
Well, today we will be studying the common characteristics of amphibians, or batrachology, to understand the mystery of Australia's cane toad infestation. First off, all amphibians lay eggs to produce their young. And while some amphibians, like salamanders, lay eggs in the tens or hundreds, frogs and toads, on the other hand, are in a class of their own with numbers in the thousands. And of these frogs and toads, cane toads are able to lay clusters of eggs up to 35,000. Imagine stumbling onto this many eggs when walking through Australia's beautiful nature. Here's what they would look like. We can tell that these eggs come from a toad because they form long strands, while frogs lay eggs in clumps.
The sheer number of eggs laid means that these toads have a higher chance of reaching maturity and continuing to increase their numbers. And that's one of the ways that cane toads have been able to spread all over Australia. But, because of this, wouldn't more toads just mean more tasty snacks for the native wildlife?
Well, let's consider how other amphibians survive and protect themselves from predators. While you may have heard their croaks, frogs and toads also have puffed up air sacs to make themselves look larger to scare off any predators. And a special group of amphibians called cephalians live underground, and the organ in their ear allows them to detect predators around them. And frogs, toads, and salamanders together can secrete poison from their skin to defend against any hungry predators. And sometimes their coloration can be a sign to stay away from them, indicating that they are poisonous.
That's right! Cane toads have toxins in their bodies, which can seriously poison predators. So because of this, cane toads are actually very dangerous to the native Australian wildlife. Larger animals often see toads as harmless and tasty, but surprise! Once consumed, the toad's poison can cause animals to become sick or even croak over in death. So, as cane toads continue to spread all over Australia, they threaten more and more of Australia's native animals.
Now, at this point, you might be wondering, how did this infestation ever happen in the first place? If cane toads are not native species, how were cane toads introduced to Australia? Well, the toads were originally brought to the island on purpose. Cane toads were known to eat insects that target crops, so farmers believed that it would be a good idea to bring the toads to eat these pests that were eating their crops. Despite these good intentions, the farmers were in for a total surprise. These large toads ended up not eating the insect pests, and instead they began preying on Australia's smaller native species. And without a larger predator that could withstand the cane toad's poison, they continued to move far and wide and endanger the lives of Australia's native wildlife.
This is a ridiculous case where toads literally covered the land and are continuing to spread even now, which is causing great damage to the surrounding wildlife. But did you know that this is actually not the first recorded historical infestation by amphibians?
Frogs are described in the book of Exodus during the 10 plagues of Egypt. Now, during that time, the nation of Israel was enslaved by Egypt, and Pharaoh, the ruler at that time, would not let the Israelites go. So Moses, along with his brother Aaron, were sent as representatives of God to call for Pharaoh to release the Israelites. But Pharaoh refused, and so his nation was hit by multiple plagues, with frogs being part of the second plague to strike the land.
We can read of this account from Exodus chapter 8, verses 1 through 6, which recounts how God caused frogs to smite the whole territory of Egypt. These frogs swarmed up from the rivers and streams into the houses of the Egyptians, into their beds, even into their ovens and their kneading bowls. They were literally everywhere.
Imagine just how many frogs were required to cover the whole territory of Egypt. This was a plague far worse than the one happening in Australia today. But the plague did indeed end when Pharaoh falsely promised to release the Israelites. Later, Exodus 8:10-13 says that the Lord caused the frogs to die off from the houses and the courts and the fields of the Egyptians. There were only frogs remaining in the Nile River.
Here, we see that the frogs that God had called forth for the plague also both came and went according to God's purposes and commands through Aaron. When Moses cried out to the Lord caused the frogs to die. So, we see that the frogs played a major part of the story of Exodus. They were used by God to accomplish His purposes, and God can continue to use these and any other animal for His own purpose. For us, we can take comfort in the fact that God is in total and sovereign control of everything, including the movement and life of frogs, toads, amphibians, or every animal on earth, even if they may seem uncontrollable by human means. So, the next time you consider the amphibians around us, we hope that you can think of God and His absolute sovereignty over all things. And remember that creation is cool, but our Creator is even cooler. We'll see you next time.
Check out our original lessons by Andy Shee on our website, which is linked below. Also check out our other Creation is Cool videos here.